in the post-war era, in the 60s, we were designing streets to move lots of cars as quickly as possible from point A to point B. So a street can do that, right? If you give a street a bunch of lanes, it can move cars really quickly. If you think of an interstate highway, that's what it does. Cars can go really quickly on an interstate highway. Buses can go really quickly on an interstate highway. If you're not stopping anywhere, we always say if you don't have to stop to pick up passengers, the bus can really move. So streets can do fast really well, or they can do slow really well if we calm traffic, as Sarah was saying with some bicycle facilities, or if the bus stops very often, as it does in Philadelphia, or the trolley stops very often, as it does in Philadelphia. Those modes are moving slowly, the street's flowing slowly, but that's, yeah, deep breaths, that's calm, that's a safe street to be on, and that's also providing lots of local access, right? So if you have a bus that's stopping every block, then people can get to that stop very easily from lots of places within that block. If it's not stopping very often, they have to walk further or take another bus to get there. It's a different kind of trip. So transportation planning is all about these sorts of trade-offs, and I just sort of want to kind of reinforce that theme for you guys. Another type of trade-off is between simple mobility and service reliability and economic development. So many of you may be familiar with the restoration of the Route 15 trolley, the Girard Avenue trolley, which happened about 10 years ago. And that route was run with buses for a long time by SEPTA, and then they brought the trolleys back. And there are these beautiful historic trolleys. They're the green trolleys, the pickles, some people call them. You see them running on Girard, and they're lovely. And the developers like them and kind of stores like them and so forth because they look more permanent than a bus. The tracks are there, you see the trolleys running, you know it's going to be running, you think it's going to be running a year from now, 5 years from now. You can make investment decisions around that thing being there. So from an economic development perspective, people like trolleys, planners like trolleys. But what you may not know about that service restoration is that after the trolley was restored, ridership plummeted. People hated it. The people that were riding the buses hate the trolley. And it took probably, I want to say 3 or 4 years for the ridership to come back up just to where it was as a bus. And the reason why people prefer, the regular riders sometimes prefer buses, is because the bus, if there's something that's stuck in if there's an accident and something gets stuck in the trolley tracks, the bus can just go around, the bus can detour. If there's a delivery vehicle double parked, the bus can go around or be detoured. The trolley can't go around. The trolley has to sit and wait. And so people that are using transit day in and day out for their lives just to get around, they just want to get to work. They don't care how pretty the vehicle is, whether it's a bus or a trolley. So that's another kind of trade-off when we're thinking about investment decisions in Philadelphia. Thaddeus was talking about all of the wonderful accessibility investments that have been made to really improve the accessibility of our transit system in our city for folks with disabilities. The nice thing about those sorts of investments is that they also improve mobility for everybody. If you think about a wheelchair, or rather an elevator accessing a subway station, that's a lifeline for somebody in a wheelchair, but for a mom with a stroller or a traveler with some suitcases, that's a huge quality of life improvement. Same thing with kneeling buses for folks with wheelchairs. They're also really good lifestyle improvements for families and for travelers, et cetera. Sometimes the trade-offs are harder. I think there's a sense among some in the planning community in Philadelphia that innovation is slow here, that we're the last city to adopt bike share and the last city to adopt protected bike lanes, and some of the transit enhancements that we've seen in other cities like bus rapid transit and things like that. Philadelphia is a temperamentally conservative place, right? Culturally, we're a little bit suspicious about change. We want to see it tested out first before we bite on it. And that partly explains what some may perceive as a slow pace of innovation. But it's also true that as Darren and John both indicated, we've got skinny streets, we've got narrow streets, we've got less space to go around than some other cities do, than Chicago does, than New York does, than Boston does, than Washington does. And so every square inch of that space it's more competitive, and it's a harder choice what you do with that. And if you want to do something else with it, you actually have to make a choice to give something up in order to make a change that you may not have to make in some other places. So I guess I'll wrap up with that. I guess I'll just say that, as I did in the beginning, thanks for having me. I love talking about transportation. I love being a transportation planner in Philadelphia because it's exactly those challenges and figuring out those trade-offs, and from DVRPC's perspective, helping the city figure out those trade-offs and working with SEPTA, et cetera. That's what it's all about, and I'm really excited to hear the ideas that you guys are all going to share with each other and with us as part of this forum.